Hello and welcome, Star Wars fans, to this week's episode of Duel of the Ranks, a show where debate takes so hot that they'd melt a planet with twin suns. My name's Brody, and I'm joined by my co-host Amanda as we attempt to discover what story is truly the best from a galaxy far, far away. On this week's episode, we're going to be discussing ranks and hot takes from Ahsoka, Episode 4, Fallen Jedi. By the end of this episode, we'll have a definitive answer on where this piece of great Star Wars content ranks amongst the rest.
And
Woo!
If it wasn't clear, there's going to be spoilers ahead.
Lots
so don't
spoilers.
listen if you haven't watched the episode.
Yeah, if you haven't watched the episode, first off, do yourself a favor and go watch the episode.
Yeah.
Just start with that.
Yes.
Start with that.
And then come back here.
Yeah. Let's just skip the pleasantries. Let's skip how our weeks
Should
were.
I just read the summary so we can get into it?
Let's just get into this.
All right. On the planet of Cetos, Ahsoka, Sabine, and Hu Yang work to repair the comm system and prepare to find the enemy's ground base. After fighting off several attackers and HK droids, Ahsoka swiftly kills Marek in a standoff, and Sabine wrestles with Shin Hati in the forest. Lady Morgan is nearly ready to make her jump across galaxies when Ahsoka shows up to the map and faces off with Baylan Skoll. She injures herself while removing the map from the pedestal, which gives Skoll the advantage to have her fall off a cliff. Sabine returns to the map and threatens to destroy it before handing it over to Skoll in the hopes of finding Ezra. Hera and a few New Republic ships locate them just in time to watch Morgan jump to hyperspace with Skoll, Hati, and Sabine on board. Ahsoka wakes up in the world between worlds and sees her old master, Anakin Skywalker.
There's so much to break down from this episode. Should we go the old format and just go one thing at a time and just say the story, the characters, the immersive? There's so much praise.
There is. Yeah. Okay,
Should
let's
we
break
just-
it down.
let's break it down.
Okay, in the story, we have one thing that I'm noticing in the story is Sabine and Ahsoka are really reliant on each other, even though they don't want to be. Several times in this episode and in previous episodes, like it starts off with Sabine asking Hu Yang, like, where's Ahsoka? And Ahsoka will be like, where's Sabine? Like, is she okay? Like, always kind of like in the back of their mind, like really worried that they aren't going to be there. They've both suffered so much loss that it's becoming really apparent that they really can't afford to lose each other this time around.
Yeah.
And Ahsoka is continuously asking Sabine, like, are you good? Like, are you here for this? Like, ready to forget Ezra and like fight for the right thing? Because Ahsoka's goal is to stop Thrawn, but Sabine's goal is to find Ezra. And we find that really apparent in this episode when Sabine hands over the map to Skoll.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, too, I was thinking in the beginning of that, I think you have to talk about characters to talk about the story, because the characters, the first time that they've actually made a real impact in this. And character by character, we can say so much, because the story itself, it was interesting. It was deep. There's a lot of immersive universe that made this what it was. I mean, that's, for me, I gave the immersive universe score a 10 out of 10. And
wow.
I know. And I don't think I've ever done that. I know you gave it a 7.8. So I'd love to hear on your end what dropped it down for you.
As far as immersive universe goes, I think this show is starting to reveal new information, less than like tying together old pieces of lore. So I just kind of looked at it a little bit differently, where we're kind of exploring a little bit more of uncharted territories. That is to be revealed, but I did give a 10 in another area that we can discuss later.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think this, I only gave it that 110 for the immersive universe, but this episode. So the Morgan, Elsbeth, did you notice when she was speaking, you heard kind of the sound of that Mother Talzin had, that echoey tone when she's talking. So there was Clone Wars tie-ins from that. Obviously, you get Anakin Skywalker, so, or some form of him.
Or is it? I don't know.
We'll get to that. So we have those things going on. You have the Imperial March that gets played. You have the I have a bad feeling about this. You have all of that stuff
Yeah.
going. I mean, you have prequels, you have stuff that ties into the sequels. You have Ahsoka taking up Form 1, which
Mm.
was started, most notably done by Qui-Gon Jinn, but then you also see Anakin take the same stance when fighting Count Dooku. And when you see the fight scene between Baylan and Ahsoka, it's very reminiscent in the beginning of kind of the original trilogy where it's like this kind of samurai standoff. They have a reverence for the weapons they're holding, but also their opponent. And then when they do go fight each other, you see Baylan at one point they have they clash sabers, and then just by sheer like strength, he overpowers her. And she's just kind of flailing at this point,
Mhm.
dodging and trying to just evade his attacks. But before even getting into, which obviously all that stuff baking into that fight was great, and it felt like a prequel fight. And then you saw the other two. What's her name? Hati.
Mhm.
And
Shin-Hati.
Shin Hati, you see her and you see Sabine fighting. And Sabine's fight, very reminiscent of Rebels when Kanan said, like, hey, don't fall back and use your wrist gauntlet.
Mhm.
And of course she goes right back to it in this episode when she can't use her lightsaber. And then she loses her lightsaber, but it felt like something right out of The Force Awakens, where
Mhm.
it's like, oh, here's what was with the old Jedi Order and this art of fighting. And now here's these younger people that don't have that kind of level of training. They don't have these droids like you see in this episode. So to help them and guide them in this lightsaber practice. So they're just kind of wildly flailing, which explains more
Yeah.
why you're like, well, why isn't Kylo just like the people? Like, well, because they don't have the resources anymore.
Yeah.
It's different. The guy's just wild and crazy. Just
No, I'm
accept
so
it.
glad you brought that up because when I'm watching Shin and Sabine fighting, while she still has the lightsaber, I'm thinking of Rey and Kylo in the forest, like with all of that energy, and they're not fighting with the same precision and grace that you see the elders
Yes.
practicing. And a better nerdier Star Wars fan than I would be able to point out all of the different forms that we saw each of them. Like Baylan would hold up to one form and then he would adjust, and then Ahsoka would adjust too. And I was like,
Yeah.
this is so cool.
Yes. It was so that fight was fantastic. Ahsoka's little jump and his jump, like he took this one just like double bounce spin move in the air on her, and I'm like,
Oh,
this is
let's also
awesome.
talk like it was so Jedi in everyone had taken their cloaks off. The cloaks and the ponchos are just coming off.
There's the
They're
clothes are
like,
all flying off.
yeah,
Yeah, that's how it's serious.
the way that they like, especially Baylan and Ahsoka go at each other, and they're like, huh, like I'm just disgarbing and like talking all this crap.
Here's my watch.
And then
Here's
okay,
my ring.
now I take my lightsaber out, and it's going on.
Yeah. Oh, and before that fight, I mean, I just have to say he carries this show for me. Like,
he really does. Every time he's on screen, I am just totally transfixed by him. He brings even the littlest lines.
yeah.
He brings it in a way that no other character on the show has brought it. I've been
Yeah.
kind of going in on Ahsoka's mannerisms or lack thereof, and there still is quite a bit of crossed arms, looking over the shoulder, facing you, but still crossed arms looking at you.
Yeah.
I get it, but I do think that I saw more of what I wanted to see from the characters in this episode.
Oh, 100%. I mean, Sabine was a sympathetic character. And Baylan, by the way, decided, I'm not going to, I mean, he's more Jedi than he is Sith. When he, instead of taking the offensive approach with Sabine to get that back,
he
decided,
clips his lightsaber on.
Yeah, and because it showcased Ahsoka, she loves Sabine, and he read that on her. He read, oh, like Ahsoka 100% used dark side powers when she saw Hati and was just like, Sabine,
yeah,
she got a menacing face and just dropped her like a bad habit, just wrecked her, threw her against a wall. Hati was down. Oh, and he, and then Balin's all pissed off about it. My take is that Hati is his daughter. Saw that somewhere
Mm,
online, and I think that's something we'll probably see, and
interesting.
probably why he left the Jedi Order and lost faith in things and whatever else. Now, explaining also why he wasn't a part of the Great Jedi Purge if he left the Order beforehand,
Hmm.
similar to how Ahsoka did. I think we're going to see a lot of similarities between those two characters leaving the Jedi Order for different reasons because, they were closed minded and everything else. They just did different things. But also, one thing I want to point out, there's a moment where Morgan's like, "Do I sense fear
Hmm.
in you?" And he's like, "Experience." And when I thought about that, there's a lot of Anakin callbacks before we actually see him this episode. And I'm thinking more about it. And I'm like, obviously, he had run ins with Anakin. The question is, did he have run ins with Darth Vader? And he knows I'm not going against Darth Vader here, but his apprentice is not going to be a joke. So he was like mentally prepping for that battle, knowing like, if I take her on, this might be my last
And
day.
he even says that to her face. He's like, I can only imagine the scars that that's left you with,
Surely that
knowing
must leave a
that.
mark.
Yes, exactly. He
Ooh.
trying to really dig in there. Also, like, let's talk about even his presence. His costume is very Darth Vader-ish. I
But
don't know
like
if you
Clone
kind of,
Wars, like with
yes,
the Obi-Wan
with
Kenobi
the shoulder
shoulders,
pads,
yeah.
and like even he has sort of like a belted piece, and his cape, and even when like we've had like some close-ups of his like gloves and stuff
Yeah.
too, that I'm like, I get a very Darth Vader presence about him, but he's obviously more like rational minded.
Yep.
Morgan also says something to him like, have you lost faith? And he was like, oh, I lost faith a long time ago.
Yeah.
Everything that he says is just so intriguing, and I want to learn more.
Yeah. I mean, everything he says is just baked into the immersive universe. And going to the immersive universe, we have to talk about Morak. Everyone was just like, but I thought he was somebody. This is such a joke. No, I think that death was amazing. Without any dialogue, you were able
Yeah.
to get across the point that whatever some Witch of Dathomir stuff was going on that brought this Inquisitor back to life. So whatever these witches are doing, like there's something they're cooking up. And I would not be surprised if Maul is involved in this show in some capacity, just because, like, if we visit Dathomir period, whether it's a flashback with Ahsoka or something, they've already shown they'll bring anyone back. They
Mhm.
already did with, I think, his brother, and I don't know. I mean, that was the last time we saw someone die. That green mist come out was Savage Opress. So
Mhm.
I think that death said more than any dialogue or any, helmet reveal
Yes,
needed to.
I agree. Like, there's definitely that moment of like, oh, I guess that was just Marek. Like,
Yeah.
that's just who it was. But you're right, when the way that he died, and that revealed so much more that is going to be at play. And I loved that reveal.
Oh, yeah. And we'll see. I mean, we'll see how it all plays out. But yeah, Sabine, we learned some interesting things this episode too. Why is she pissed off with Ahsoka? We were thinking as she gave up on her. No, she holds it against her for her family dying, and she wasn't
Yeah.
able to go back to her planet. We didn't know that. And
And
Sabine,
yeah,
yeah,
so like, I mean, we still don't know what happened between Rebels and up to this point. And it's weird that they're kind of dangling it in front of us. I really hope that we get a little bit of what broke them. I feel like that can be used against Ahsoka, or I mean, against Sabine at some point, like some mind games and like trying to. If you think of like Rise of Skywalker, how Rey kind of faced like the dark version of herself, will Sabine have to face like a dark Ahsoka or something?
well, oh, and here's what I'm thinking is happening. I think, and I thought this, I remember saying years ago, I was like, Sabine, what if she started the Knights of Ren? I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. And now, going right back to it, I'm saying Sabine founded the Knights of Ren. Not putting this in my hot take segment, even though I think it might get hotter with
Interesting.
time. I mean, it makes sense if she's
Wouldn't
kind
it
of,
be called the Knights of Sabine?
yeah, but what if she's kind of recreating the House of Ren because it's gone? and she's doing her own version of it because Mandalore is like what she knew of it is it's glass. And so she's creating House Wren all over again. And if she's tied in to these dark Jedi who get tied in to Snoke, I don't know. I don't think it's that. I used to think that's a reach. Now it's presented in front of me, and I'm like, she's literally with the enemy that helps. They're literally trying to form the First Order, and she's on their side.
Yep.
This isn't a crazy thought anymore.
No.
This is like it's something we have to take serious as a plausible possibility.
Jumping back to the story, I also was at this point where like I really didn't know where it was going to go. I was kind of like trying to predict, okay, does the New Republic ships with Hera show up right in time and then they also jump to hyperspace? Like instead what happens is like they get blown off, and I love that we get kind of a classic Star Wars moment, which is like the X-Wings like blowing up and kind of no one officially died. It looked like a couple people were crashing down to the planet, so we'll see if some of those friends made it, including Carson Teva.
I think he's fine.
I'm sure he's
I
fine.
think there's some other dead folks though. But I don't know if you know who some of these folks were.
Mm-mm.
A lot of them, I mean, all of them were related in some capacity or to either they themselves were stunt doubles in other shows, other projects. One of the guys who was piloting an X-wing is actually the guy who plays Mando in one of the episodes.
Pedro Pascal?
Nope. And I didn't know this, but the guy who's in Mando's costume happens to be his like name's like Tim Wayne, Jim Wayne, something like that. Turns out he's John Wayne's grandson. So anyway, interesting fun fact that
I figure that all extras in Star Wars are nepotism or cameos of some degree.
in some capacity. Yeah.
But very cool that they're giving like the stunt doubles like some FaceTime.
Yeah.
Because that guy is behind a mask the entire time and doesn't get credit for his work. So that's cool.
Yeah. So no, I mean, honestly, that was really cool. I think we do need to touch on Anakin Skywalker and the world between worlds because
did not see that coming.
Let's try to make as smooth of a transition as what we saw on what was it when they leave the planet and there's like the water, the waves, but then the waves turn into the like stardust that she's laying on.
Yeah, that was
like,
cool.
It was the cleanest transition Star Wars has ever had.
That was I
remember watching it, I was like, oh, this is as it was happening, I'm like, this is amazing cinematography. I was looking right at my life and I'm like, this is amazing. So, and then you see Anakin.
Well, you don't see him at first.
You see Hayden Christensen.
He says, "Hello, Snips."
Oof. I know. You're like, well, and then you see him. And the funniest part is that I'm hoping it's not really him because that de-aging tech was not good.
It was definitely him, but it looked like he was supposed to be a Force ghost, but they like took the glow off. You know, they just like smooth and brighten.
What I'm curious about is I'm not sure if it's him because as a lot of other fans have noted, you hear the Imperial March theme as you see him, and then once the credits go, it's almost like the turn that you're going to perceive or you're going to see next week is something bad's happening.
Oh yeah.
And someone did say, and I would love if Filoni made this happen. This isn't my take, but I saw this online that we saw when the sister, she sacrificed her life so that she could give it to Ahsoka. So Ahsoka now is now she's the form of an owl and she walks with her. But the son desperately wanted Anakin. And so there's this take that some form of Anakin is tied to the sun now, and that's why when you see Anakin, it doesn't look like his lightsaber, it looks like Darth Vader's. And so there's something here, and people are saying they're trying to give the CGI an out to say this is why it looks so bad. This is
why, yeah.
I'm like,
no, I think that's really just probably what the de-aging looks like. I think it personally looks better in Obi-Wan Kenobi.
They didn't really de-age him in Kenobi.
Yeah, and that's probably why they went really far in like overcorrection. But like we said last week, I am extremely happy and blessed to have this moment in Star Wars, letting Hayden get the real appreciation and star moment that he deserves. And I don't know if everyone has heard this, but I guess next week's episode is being released in select theaters around the country.
And I will be in LA for one of the theaters that it's going to be at. Yeah,
You
that
should
day.
go.
I might.
You should go because you said otherwise you have to wait till Thursday.
Yeah, I've been thinking to myself, I might go see it in theater.
Yeah, if
It's
you
at
can.
5. It's only at 5 p.m. and there's a wait list. So I was like, I don't know if I'm going to actually go all that way to see it.
But also, it's only episode 5.
Yeah.
That's not even the finale. So what's going to happen?
Dude, this next episode is going to be, it's got to be some level of insane.
Yeah.
Now,
to put it on the big screen. And I thought this week's episode, okay, I've been pretty critical about some of the first fight scenes in the first couple episodes of Ahsoka feeling a little clunky. But this week, everything changed for me. I felt like the pacing, the choreography, it felt more expensive. It felt like they got a bigger budget for this episode specifically. I don't know if you felt the same way.
I did, especially when there's that fight out in space.
Yeah.
When I saw the X-Wings crash into each other,
yeah.
how realistic that felt. And when there was the moment where the larger ship jumps to hyperspace. Like,
yeah.
It was so cool. The effects were so cool, and watching them kind of like crash into each other. I also noticed the plant life. I mean, it's a beautiful planet, but all the plants are red. And the last time we saw that I can remember were the plants on Mortis. If you remember the Clone Wars, just really like saturations turned all the way up. And yeah, that's the last time I remember seeing something like that.
One thing I want to call out is how Baylan, when he is like standing around the map, he looks at all of it and he just says to himself, witchcraft. And I want to get your take on what you think that kind of means, what the subtext of that is. Is he kind of skeptical about all of this? Like he's a non-believer, but he does believe it. I mean, he's calling it as he sees it. Just, I don't know. How do you think he feels about being involved with these witches now?
That's interesting because remember last episode, Shin was just saying like witchcraft, and he's like, it's not witchcraft, it's this. And this episode, he's like,
that's witchcraft.
Witchcraft. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm really interested to see what Morgan's got up her sleeves, and I never really cared about her as a character. Did you know? Sorry, fun facts galore today. Did you know she is Bruce Lee's goddaughter?
Really?
Yeah, and so she like learned. I believe there was like she was also started her own career as a stunt double and went that direction. And
I love her performance. She's been, I love what she's bringing to it, and I'm still curious to learn more about how she's like a dark Jedi.
Yeah.
Another question I want to ask you. Did Sabine use the Force to push Shinhati?
I think so.
You think so? It kind of played that sound, and then Shinhati looks away, and then she was like, "You have no power." Do you think Shin just like expected to get hit with something, and she like reflexed?
That's what I thought at first, but I don't know. I'd like to believe that. I mean, honestly, that probably is the case. I just would like to believe that Sabine, like, we just want to root for her and just hope that she actually did what she was hoping to do. But in all honesty, yeah, you're probably right. She probably didn't push her at all. And then,
or if she did a little bit, then like maybe Shin was like, "You still have no power. Like you're weak." Yeah.
Yeah. Low level, barely nudged me. Yeah. I mean, either way, if she does have any force powers, it's not much. That to be said, she still got off her wrist rockets and everything there. So if we took my question for you is, let's take away all of the immersive universe, which is why, again, I give it a 10 out of 10, because that's everything we're breaking down right now is the immersive universe giving the characters so much lore to stand on. This episode is so insanely lore heavy. I mean, we got the first time, we got the world between worlds, and you tie in sequels, Rebels, Clone Wars, originals, and prequels in this episode. I mean, everything. Every single movie in some way is involved in this episode.
You just made me change my immersive universe score.
Okay.
You're right. You're right. I don't have much of a leg to stand on based on our conversation so far. So
Yeah, it's
I upped it to a 9.
it honestly though, when you think about it, what reasoning is there to give it anything less? Like
Yeah.
everything was tied into this episode, and they're saying the next episode's going to be bigger, and they accomplished that while not feeling like the Rise of Skywalker. So my question for you is, let's strip the immersive universe from this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Is it standalone? Is you're a new Star Wars viewer, is this episode still extremely enjoyable?
I think so, because we get several different battle scenes.
Mm-hmm.
You get lightsabers, you get pew pew, you get droid on droid combat. Let's not forget Hu Yang getting involved in the fight there too. You get jumping to hyperspace. I think it's just so engaging. I also want to talk about how like Ahsoka and Sabine in that first fight with those like the HK droids and the other people that just found them. I loved watching them fight Jedi and Mandalorian side by side as a Jedi and as a Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Instead of Sabine trying to be something she's not. However, Hu Yang does say like, all right, stay together, you two, which is like one of the corniest moments in the whole episode. And then what happens? They don't stay together.
Yep. Bit of obvious foreshadowing that showcases what's going to happen. No, my thought is, when the immersive universe and lore is done right, if fans don't know something, they'll want to go look it up.
Mm-hmm.
It's not done well when it's completely standing on the immersive universe and people don't understand what this story is. What's great about Baylan is that all of us don't know about his story. We're all inferring, but we know so much about the lore that there's a lot we can fill in the gaps with. Whereas if you're a new viewer, it's just interesting and you want to know more. And they're doing that with Sabine. They're doing that, like, if you don't know anything, you just know that, oh, hey, her family died, and you can relate to that. So we're learning that too. But because we know about the Siege of Mandalore, there's a lot of extra things we can fill in. So I think the immersive universe, obviously, it makes it so much more rich. But I do believe this is an extremely enjoyable episode
that can stand on its own for someone who's not deep in it. And like you said, like when Sabine talks about how like her family dies, yes, we know Siege of Mandalore and everything that led up to it, but now anyone who doesn't gets the gist of it,
Yeah. And they,
without slowing down the story and doing like tons of exposition, because that would just deflate the whole show.
They kind of did that first episode when she's playing that Tomb Raider thing. I was like, all right, this is a little long, but no. And there's sometimes those moments like it drug out a little bit before she fought Baylan, but I did enjoy it, and that's in that state before it was going to go down. What I will say though, at this point, we are halfway through the show. There is no world I think Ahsoka is a character that you root for, you care about. I'm not feeling it at all. It's interesting because Ahsoka had so much personality, and now the stoicism, I think, is just crippling this character. And if you wanted to compare her to say, oh, Qui-Gon Jinn was stoic, yes, but there were elements about him that you related to, and like, oh, he gave this boy a chance when nobody else would.
Baylan Skoll is stoic.
And
he uses every moment on screen to like still emotionally elicit something from an audience. And I do think that like Rosario Dawson's performance did a lot better, especially in her scenes with Baylan Skoll, and those fight scenes. But on their own, I don't think that she's able to truly carry it yet.
It's almost like, I don't know what it is about Star Wars and their main characters of the shows, but it is insane to me that every single time there's a character I don't care about, with Cassian Andor, with Ahsoka,
it's the main character,
with Boba Fett, with Mando. It's like they're doing this thing where it's like a video game. And the main character is just a vessel for the audience to see everything that, like, as the main character sees it, and you're just taking things in more than you are responding and doing things yourself. Ahsoka, I think, is the first time this entire show when she lashes out and she throws Shin against a rock. I'm like, oh, this is the first time you made like your own decision.
Yeah.
This whole show.
Yeah.
And now it's like,
dude, Sabine even clocks her on that too, like, because Ahsoka's talking to her about like, you have to like give up this idea of like saving Ezra or finding him or anything because it might be too late. And she was like, do you even believe that? You know? And that's the whole reason that she left the Jedi Order to begin with. And she's still trying to force Sabine to keep in this Jedi way. And it's resistance.
Yeah. And I was thinking when I was watching it, I'm like, I've said it before, I'll say it again. Ahsoka was made interesting because of the people around her. Now her decisions, and I'm excluding very specific episodes in the Clone Wars where I do think Ahsoka was interesting. The arc specifically that comes to mind is obviously her leaving the Jedi Order in those events. You have the events with her and Maul. In the Clone Wars, Ahsoka is a very interesting character, a relatable character. When you care about, when you see her again in Rebels, you're really just thinking about those events more than you're thinking about her specifically. And then that fight with Anakin, it's because of her relationship, not really her. Now you have this, and especially if you read the book, and I'm like, I just don't know outside of those specific events if Ahsoka's a character that we need to keep going back to after this. I think personally, if you're gonna like start making content like someone like Luke Skywalker and him starting the Jedi Temple, things like that are a lot more interesting.
No.
Unless you like actually make Ahsoka more interesting.
No, I am tired of us going back to Luke Skywalker. No more Luke Skywalker.
I felt that way. And then I saw Luke in season 2 of Mando. And I'm like, maybe if Sebastian Stan is casted.
That's the thing. They need to recast.
Sebastian Stan would be great.
Absolutely. You don't need to do anything to it.
He looks so similar to Mark Hamill.
And they also had a stand-in actor for that episode that also looked exactly like young Mark Hamill. Like, there are people out there. Young Mark Hamill is not that distinguishable like of a person. Like, he's just your average every white man,
I look just like it. Hey, Lucasfilm, looking for a young Luke.
Before we go on, I have to talk about the area that I gave a 10 out of 10.
Okay.
Which is, once again, well, this is the first time it's gotten a 10 out of 10, but it's Kevin Kiner's score. The music, I felt like in this episode, because of all of the fight scenes, some of the scenes with the anticipation of getting the map uploaded and the hyperspace like moving, the New Republic ships that come in, all of these moments had great music that felt so authentic to Star Wars. We've talked about this week after week, that it brings it to life in like a really youthful way. And he just blends in these traditional motifs from other Star Wars projects so perfectly in there. Like when I think Hera is in her ship, you sort of hear the Across the Stars melody like kind of fit in there and be transformed into something else. We've talked about how like the Darth Vader theme comes in at the end of the episode. It's just so good. Kevin Kiner, please reach out to us. We would love to have you on the show.
I love that. Hey, if you never reach for the stars, you're always going to end up with a handful of dirt.
Big fan. So do we want to talk about our final scores for this?
People are going to be really disappointed when they hear that.
Tanked it.
You know what? This is the second highest score for anything we've ever given any Star Wars episode review ever. The highest Star Wars ranking we have
is the I.
Andor season 1, episode 6. Yeah,
really, 6, that holds in my mind as still a top.
But
episode.
This one, that was 89.73. This is 89.6.
Wow. 0.1 off.
0.13%. I mean, this is barely anything.
It's
1A, 1B. And you know
Yes.
what? Like this next episode they teed it up. It may top that. I don't know. We've never had an all around A
90.
level,
Yeah.
90 level episode, but this next one might be it. So looking at this, I mean, it makes sense.
How we scored it?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it makes sense. Like everything,
Yeah.
like what are we gonna say? I mean, if you are just tuning in now and you missed the earlier part of this episode, I'm telling you, listeners, go back and listen. We gave you a great debrief of what this
Yes.
episode was about. Some good debates, some good, really just, I think we both
Observations.
good observations. Go back, listen to it if you're just trying to live stream now. Otherwise, I think we got to go to the hot take segment of the show.
Yeah.